Thank you, Todd. Thank you, guys. I'm so fortunate to be here today to talk with you about modernizing the data center and that journey towards hybrid cloud. I'm Ryan Lynn, and I lead our emerging architecture team out of the Mountain States. This is me, and this photo represents about a 15-year commitment with snowboarding. It was a long time coming. It was super hard, an iterative process where you have to take small steps of testing and trying and failing, learning and adjusting. Rinse and repeat, and every once in a while add in some success just to keep you going. It was a personal journey for me where I really perfected my style, my skills, my knowledge, and my experience on the mountain. This is my son, Buzz. He's 12. He crossed over to snowboarding 5 years ago, and because I'm the only other snowboarder in the family, it was my responsibility to help him develop. If you have kids or you've been around kids, you know how very quickly they have an ability to react, absorb information, and really they're natural experimenters, and they have endless energy. So as a result, it didn't take him very long to master my skills. So as a dad, was I proud? Oh yeah. As a person with an ego, was I hurt? Oh yeah. I felt a little aged, maybe a little less relevant, but I love seeing him grow. 2 years ago, we went to Winter Park, and Buzz had never boarded at Winter Park, and so we were at the top of one of the runs. And we were getting ready to go down, and I could see he had that kind of look in his eye, like, I'm going to show my dad what I can do. We're going down the run, and about a quarter of the way down, whoosh, he just goes barreling by me. He turns, and he gives me that kind of boyish smile, like, hey, old man, check me out. Now, his smile quickly went to a look of confusion when he saw me start to slow down and back off. You see, what I knew and what he didn't was that about halfway down that run, it turned into a giant mogul field. I know I'm a bad parent, right? At this point, he centers himself, looks out, and realizes the same. And I'm confident he's preparing for wreckage, and I'm secretly preparing for an ER visit. But what I learned about his development and what I saw that day was that his approach to the mountain was different than mine. He attacked the problem uniquely with his own set of skills. So he centered himself, found his lines, and he rode that thing out. So this is us together. And the moral of the story really here is that the whole truly is greater than the sum of the parts. See, I'm a much more cautious snowboarder. Very tried and true. Years and years of experience, that's what drives me. What drives him is reacting rapidly to changes, quickly learning, and developing new skills. So our advantage to each other is the reciprocal sharing of our styles. Public cloud burst onto the scene 15 years ago as that young and immature, inexperienced fad. And a lot of people in the industry thought, hey, this thing's going to crash and burn, it'll never catch on. But it hasn't. It's accelerated. And it's continuing to teach us new ways that the business wants to consume technology. So the goal should be this beautiful hybrid between public cloud and what it can teach us, and evolving and modernizing our own on-premise environments with those unique features. So what I'd like to accomplish with you in the short period of time that I have is I'd like to take a quick look at the current state of private cloud, on-premise private cloud, and the role that it plays in hybrid. I also want to look at some areas of modernization for that private cloud infrastructure, and then wrap up with some best practices. My hope is that by the time we're done, you have some fresh ideas about modernization, and I've encouraged you to continue that transformation. So let's start with some research from 451. This graph shows 2017 on the left, 2019 on the right, and I want to clue into the non-cloud workloads, the one on the bottom. What we see there is a 15% reduction in non-cloud workloads. That's a good thing. Everybody should be celebrating that. We're migrating those workloads to better technologies. The question becomes, where are they moving? We see that On-premise private cloud only has a 1.4% projected increase, while SaaS and infrastructure as a service is looking at a clip over 6. So you have to start to wonder, why is that? Are there just a lack of use cases for private cloud? It's not the case. Talk with a lot of clients and talk with the industry. We have a lot of use cases. Controlling performance, security, privacy, and really solidifying data ownership for the business. On the wings of that, industries like healthcare and insurance, financial, utilities, these areas are bound by legality or regulation that prohibits them or restricts them from using public cloud. We have existing investments into our infrastructure, into our data centers, into our operations staff. Some people think that cost might be the biggest enabler of private cloud, but this is neither true nor false completely. You see, it's hard to quantify the cost of private cloud because it's not structured the same way. Those on-premise environments aren't consumable on demand. It's hard to really get a metered effect out of them. But it's also the reverse is true. We have capacity and optimization and automation that can drive those cost synergies. We have challenges with moving and refactoring and modifying our legacy applications. There's a new area that's popped up. It's been talked about a little bit, this area of edge. What we're doing is we're pushing applications out to the edge of the network to really enhance that user experience. Content delivery networks did a great job of pioneering this for us many years ago by pushing content out into the edge where the user experience is going to be much better. So we're seeing a lot of use cases now with things like smart cities, automated vehicles that are driving an enormous amount of data that needs to be processed locally so we can get that real-time response back. Things like AR and VR, we just heard about. Tremendous amounts of video that have to be processed in order to paint those virtual worlds. Latency is a big deal, so edge is becoming a very real thing for private cloud. Fear is still an issue that keeps people from exploring and embracing public cloud. But it's also true that a fear of missing out is driving a lot of people to hastily decide to move workloads to cloud. So we know there are use cases for private cloud, and we certainly know that public cloud has its benefits. So the advantage here, again, is not an or conversation, it's an and conversation. So this is the part of the conversation where customers will ask me, well, what workloads are people running on different clouds? Let's take a look at how your peers are distributing applications into different clouds. I'm going to start by focusing on on-premise private cloud. We see things like back office enterprise applications. It's one of the largest. We just talked about it. It's the core business components that are hard to change or disrupt. Batch computing, large amounts of data that need to be processed, and that data has just not been economical to move to cloud, or it's been challenging. So if we flip that over and look at public cloud, we see that the first one we see is cloud-native applications. This makes sense. Things that are born in the cloud, written for cloud, that's where they run. The other area, collaboration applications. This is things like WebEx or other conferencing features. You don't find too many clients building these things themselves. It's better to consume as a SaaS offering. But if you look at the graph as a whole, you can see there's a nice balance between on-premise, private, and public. With the green in the middle is hybrid, and that's really where we have that fluidity to move workloads. That's the sweet spot. If we look at private's role in those hybrid models, I want to highlight just 4 of them real quick. The first one we see is what's called best venue or optimal placement. All this means is we're going to take that workload, we're going to answer a bunch of questions about the criteria of it, whether it's things about cost or performance or scale or security or locality, and those things are going to drive the placement onto the appropriate cloud. The next one is an early adopter that we've seen several times before, disaster recovery. Cloud opened up a lot of options for us to be able to have warm or cold standby locations, either running on public or conversely, running your production in public and having your DR site in private. Lifecycle based. This is taking the software development lifecycle process and the groups that are involved in it, groups like dev and test and QA and production, and aligning them to the cloud that makes the most sense for them based on their activity. And the last one is what we call split tier. This is logically separating the application into its tiers, and again, aligning the tier to the right cloud that services that. Take, for example, like the web services tier. Scale out, scale back, something like that might benefit heavily from public cloud. So you might be thinking, okay, so we should have massive adoption of hybrid cloud, right? The statistics say otherwise. So you're left to wonder why again. Why is this? It's because we're not there yet with with private cloud. See, what we've done is we've taken virtualization and we've taken some automation and we've called it private cloud. And it's a great step, but that's all it is a step. We have to continue to understand what makes cloud so powerful and how we can continue to transform. So I think it's worth mentioning these are the core tenets of cloud. We do number 7 really well. We've been doing it for a decade and a half, virtualizing and getting abstraction from that hardware. But think about the other 6 in your organizations. How mature are these other 6 in your areas? So I spend a lot of time with clients, and I often get this question, well, Ryan, I don't know how to get there. How do we get there? I believe that the journey starts with vision and strategy. If you don't have a plan, you're guessing. You may be right, but the statistics are not in your favor. So I spend a lot of time helping clients with vision and strategy, and this reference architecture is the output of that. It's a visualized roadmap for them. The goal here is to capture their future state of where they're trying to go while showing them areas of focus for modernizing that infrastructure underneath. If you're interested in something like this, please reach out to your Trace3 account team. They'll be happy to get a hold of it for you. So let's zoom into the infrastructure for a little bit and look at some areas of modernization. This is not an exhaustive list. In the interest of time, I can't cover everything, but if you see something up here you are interested in, please come introduce yourself over the week, and again, reach out to your Trace3 account team. So if we start with compute, specifically processing enhancements, we see people go naturally to x86, and we're going to continue to see great things there. More cores, higher clock speeds, more of that. But if you look at other things that are happening that are enhancing the compute area, things like the instruction set, the microcode, we're getting more benefit out of the hardware. So we're doing things like enabling higher network I/O, 100 gigabit to servers. We're also getting the ability to dig deeper into network packets and do better analysis. Things like AES encryption and decryption. These are things that are going to give us tremendous performance because we're offloading that function onto the hardware where it can do it better. x86 isn't the only game in town, though. We all have cell phones. We all have tablets. Those things are built on ARM processors, which are also making their way into other areas. ARM's different than x86. It's a reduced instruction set, so it's smaller and it consumes less power, which means that it has its own use cases. Things like IoT, where you have thousands of devices out there that need to consume low amounts of power. That would be a great use case for ARM. We heard Jim make mention of a very powerful co-processor that's coming out, GPUs. These massively parallel architectures are great at chewing through data. And so we see cases where machine learning and AI are great use cases for those types of things. If we switch gears and talk about hyper-converged and composable for a second, this is where we're starting to get that software-defined data center. We're really starting to evolve that private cloud to a place where we can consume it better. So you look at things like hyper-converged, it's a distributed system, and we're taking components of compute and storage, and we're pooling them together to be managed as one. And that's the key takeaway, managed as one entity. Those environments are modular, which allows us to lifecycle equipment in and out of them quickly, and also things like maintenance and patch management are much easier. The area of edge computing is taking advantage of hyperconverged. Now, if we take a slightly different approach and look at something like composable systems are great because what they do is they take the physical server and they abstract the pieces away, the CPU, the memory, the storage, the network. And they put it into pools where applications can now leverage and build on-demand systems that can leverage those things. So you may have an application that says, hey, I need this type of server with these CPUs, this memory, this storage breakout, and this network I/O. And this system, using a unified API, will actually build that for that application. If it's a transient workload and it's going to go away, those resources are returned back to the pool. Very powerful. Let's flip over to storage for a second. In the area of storage, folks, we have magnetic hard drives at 14 terabytes. That is unbelievable. We have 30 terabyte SSD drives, and just last month, 100 terabyte SSD was just announced. So think about that for a second. 100 terabytes in an SSD form factor. We're going to be able to pack a petabyte of data into a single RU. Not that you would want to at this point. Maybe the fault domain's a little small. But this is all coming on the wings of improvements in memory and storage. All flash is mainstream. We've seen that it's uncovered some deficiencies in some areas. Things like SATA and SAS, these storage protocols, are not allowing us to really leverage all that we have to offer with SSD. So we're seeing technologies like NVMe being built into servers and also being built into storage arrays that are opening up the lanes of communication to let us take advantage of those drives. We have 3D XPoint, which is bridging the gap between storage and memory, giving us the speed we want out of DRAM, but making it non-volatile. All of these things are being worked into servers and storage infrastructures that are allowing you to have choice for your workloads. If we flip over to network for a second, network is going to continue to have speed increases. There's no doubt about that. But the area that's the most exciting is the programmatic management of networks today. We're now in a position where we have southbound APIs into all of these devices, all new devices. And this is powerful because this is an area that's needed some help for a while. So we're able to see the rise of automation technologies, either vendor-aligned or sort of a roll-your-own mentality where you're using things like Ansible or Puppet or Home Scripts, Python. You have choices there. And in the middle, we have platform providers that are doing some amazing stuff with device modeling and service modeling with languages like Yang. If you look at intent-driven networking, this is something that's very exciting. Imagine being able to describe to software your desired outcome for the network. For example, if I said, build a VLAN on Boston Core Switch 1, and the system was able to interpret that, look at the running configuration in the network, the desired outcome, and then instantiate the command sets to make that happen. This is very powerful. We're also seeing companies that are looking to add on top of that interfaces into things like chatbots or natural language processing. Imagine having Alexa for your network. It's coming. The last area I want to talk about is containers and serverless. I call this workload because virtualization felt like too narrow of a topic. So we're going to start with containers. And wouldn't it be great if you could take away from this conference exactly what some people, your peers, are doing with containers? Wouldn't that be valuable? I'm going to call an audible. I want everybody to stand up. Everybody stand up. I'm going to call an audible because we got number 18 behind there. We're going to do a little apple, apple. I want you to stay standing if you have conversations, POCs, or any workload on containers today. And if you're Trace3 or a partner, if you're Trace3 and you're working with clients that are doing this, please remain standing as well. So remain standing if you're talking about, have POCs, or are running containers in dev, test, or production. Okay? Remain standing if you have moved beyond the conversation and you have any workload running in dev, test, or production. Remain standing if you have a production workload running on containers. Last one, remain standing if you have a client-facing, revenue-generating app running on containers. Look around, folks. These are the Trailblazers. The purpose of this conference is to connect people together. If you see folks around you that have that, introduce yourself, find out how they're using them. Containers are great, and I think they're going to be exciting, but we have to be practical about them. They're going to enable us for speed and agility and enabling distributed applications. They're also a key component to hybrid with portability. But we still have some work to do there. We've got to button up the security a little bit, and we've got to deal with some challenges around networking. But I'm excited. Check out the breakouts tomorrow. There's several things that I've talked about that are going to be talked about, composable and containers. The last area, I'd like to give the award for the worst technology name to Serverless. And because of that, we will furthermore refer to Serverless as Mike. Because why not? So what's happening with Serverless? We have virtual machines. Really what Serverless is doing is it's changing the interface into the code. Okay? So we have virtual machines that have applications as the entry point to the code. We have containers that are giving us the process level entry point to the code. We have Mike, who's giving us the functional level, the function call itself. And what that's great for is things like triggered events or transaction-based things. Think IoT again. But the point of all of this stuff is really about the right tool for the right job. All of this is. You have choices, and you've got to align the right technology with the right workload. All right, so let's wrap up. Best practices for modernization. These are just some things that I want you to think about as you're going through this journey. The first one is spend time visualizing and documenting your plan. Again, if you don't have a plan, you're guessing. Ensure that your infrastructure is truly open. This makes it easier to integrate. Spend time talking with your partners about parity across clouds. If you're looking at solutions that are on-premise and in the cloud, nothing is worse than operational disparity. Try and find solutions that leverage software. Hardware is harder to change. We need great hardware underneath, but we need intelligent software systems to extend those. If you find in your life cycles or your refreshes that you're not getting a lot of value between those, that might be an area for commoditizing. Make sure that you're staying close to industry standards, and if you have to go closed system, make sure there's some entry point in there to get into that system. And lastly, and this plays on what Tyler said, please spend the time to invest in your people, your teams, and your processes. They have to come with you. Okay, I want to leave you with this last thought, but I got to transition to our next speaker. How can I make this happen so that you'll remember the key takeaway? A jingle. But not just any jingle. We're going to nationwide this thing. All right, so on the count of 3, I want you to help me sing this one. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Modernize your private cloud. Thank you so much. Enjoy the conference.